friends, today I'm going to talk about the books that I finished in the past couple of months. So I've talked about this plenty. I haven't really read much in the past couple of months. I finished 2 books after the last wrap-up that I did last year. I think it was my August wrap-up. And then I read 1 book in September and 1 book in November, and that's it. So I didn't do any wrap-ups. It wasn't even worth it to do like a what I read wrap-up because it was literally 2 books. But I have finished another book in January. I read some poetry in January. And then at the beginning of February, I finished another audiobook. And so I just thought it's about time to just talk about what I have read in the time where I haven't really read and where I also haven't talked to you about the little bit that I have read. So we're just gonna get into it. Obviously, my thoughts on the books that I read a little while ago might be a little bit rusty, but regardless, let's just get into it. The book that I read in September was Tunnel of Bones by Victoria Schwab. I had this pre-ordered. I think I had both the hardcover and the paperback pre-ordered, but I only had one version here and the other one arrived at my parents' house, I'm pretty sure. I don't even know, whatever, doesn't matter. I definitely had a physical copy, but didn't end up reading it and ended up going for the audiobook because I just could not push myself to read that book. But I really wanted to read that book because obviously it was a new Victoria Schwab release and I am a pretty big Victoria Schwab fan, so I just really wanted to read it as soon as possible. This is the sequel to City of Ghosts. I really enjoyed City of Ghosts. I think I gave it 4 stars and I just had a lot of fun while reading it. I didn't enjoy Tunnel of Bones as much, and I can't really say why. I mean, at the end of the day, it's middle grade, and like, it's rare for me to give middle grade anything more than 4 stars. It has to hit a certain way in order for me to, you know, really, really love a middle grade. I just really enjoy this world, and I really enjoy the characters, but like, that's kind of it. I really, really loved the villain in the first one, and like, in this second one, I didn't really have that. And then on top of that, I think that it felt different when it comes to the setting as well. When you read City of Ghosts, you can just tell the love for Edinburgh pouring out of the pages, and that's another aspect that I really loved for the first book. And the second book took place in Paris, and it was all good and great, but like, you could just tell that for Victoria Schwab, Edinburgh just hits different, and it wasn't quite there for Paris. So I think those 2 aspects mainly were like the main reason why I enjoyed City of Ghosts more and why I had lots more feelings towards City of Ghosts, and it didn't quite get there with Tunnel of Bones. But again, I still enjoy the world and I still enjoy the characters, and I am very excited for the 3rd book, and I gave Tunnel of Bones a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then the 1 book that I read in November was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, the 3rd and final book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. My journey with this series has been incredibly interesting. I read The Cruel Prince kind of on a whim because I had access to the audiobook. I was kind of like sure I wouldn't really enjoy it. I was like, it's not really my thing, and I don't like the whole premise of it is not really my thing, and I don't think it's gonna be my thing. And then I enjoyed it more than I thought, but still didn't love it. Like, it was kind of like, oh, this was exactly what I thought it was, plus being pleasantly surprised a little bit. And then I read The Wicked King and absolutely fell in love with The Wicked King. So much so that I made it my favorite book of 2019. And then The Queen of Nothing I gave it 4 stars, and like, yeah, I think that was kind of like a sense of like, God, I love The Wicked King so much. But considering I gave The Cruel Prince 3.5 stars, I'm like, I will probably have to lower my rating to 3 stars. I really think that I liked The Queen of Nothing the least out of this whole trilogy, which is wild. I did not expect that, because going into The Queen of Nothing, I obviously was attached to these characters. I already loved the world, I already loved the writing, whereas going into The Cruel Prince, obviously I had none of that. I just think that the more time passes since I've read it, the more I'm like, wow, I was actually really disappointed with that final book. And at the end of the day, it's like, fine, it's whatever, because like, again, going into The Cruel Prince, I was like, this is not my type of book. I just don't really read much fairy stuff, and so it's like something that I still should have expected. I guess just because I love The Wicked King so much, I just had higher expectations. And I just think that this really could have been a favorite series. So I don't know, I just have a lot of mixed feelings and I can't even really describe what it is. I think that in The Wicked King, a lot of things came together that I just really, really loved. I really loved the development of the relationships, the development of the characters. I remember how much I liked the undersea kingdom and all of these things. I think just many, many things came together for me to end up loving that book. And I just think that I just wasn't quite as lucky with The Queen of Nothing. It just really wasn't that good of a conclusion in many ways. I mean, several aspects were just not that well done and I kind of just expected more. And I just think that this just really didn't reach its potential. For me personally, obviously that's at the end of the day, that's still subjective thoughts. I just think that even objectively, that this book lacks a lot of things and definitely could have been a better conclusion. But obviously I'm very happy with seeing that a lot of people who love the series did really love this final book as well. It just didn't quite get there for me. Again, I gave it a 4 stars originally, but I think I was just kind of feeling sad about the fact that I didn't love it. I think it's more of a 3 stars. Then I started off this new year and this new decade buddy reading a book with Melanie, and that was This Is How You Lose the Time War. This is one of the most beautiful books I have ever read in my entire life. It is just an incredible book. It's incredibly well written. It's beautifully written. I just loved so many things about it. And while it is like a science fiction time travel story, and you have to wrap your head around that world building for sure, I definitely had trouble getting into this book 100%. But at the end of the day, this is a romance. It is a romantic storyline, and it's a beautifully romantic storyline, and it is a female-female romance, and I just love this so much. It's one of those books where, again, you might have trouble kind of getting into it, but once you really understand what you're reading and you really get a feel for the characters and the world, it's just one of the best things ever, and it's just beautiful, and it pays off, it pays off to push through a little bit. I just truly love this so much. I still don't really have proper thoughts about it because I feel like it really got to me emotionally as well. A lot of things in it just really, really hit differently, and I just felt very connected to it in a lot of ways as well. And so I'm kind of just blanking on how to talk about how amazing and wonderful and beautiful this book is and why I think other people should read it, because it's more just this book is just, in my heart and I just love it so much. But again, it's beautifully written and it has this really interesting world building, and just it's in general just really interestingly written. It's very much written in letters that these characters write to each other, and just the way that it's done as well, the way that it's structured is so good too. And I just, this is just one of the best books I've ever read, honestly. And it's so small and short, it's just so, it has such a huge impact in 200 pages. I just loved it so much. High key, it's been a month since I finished it and I cannot stop thinking about it, and I keep wanting to reread it just to even feel more and to even get it more and just to absorb everything better as well. It's just one of those books. It's just one of those books, y'all. I just love it, and I feel like it was definitely a book that was talked about a lot last year. I definitely heard people talking about it, but I still feel like it doesn't really get the hype that it really, really deserves. And I'm even mad. I'm wow, I had this on my radar for a really long time and it took me this long to read it, and I would not have read it if Melanie didn't say, I'm gonna read this, do you want to buddy read this? I probably still would have waited another 5 years till I actually picked it up. So pick this book up if it's on your radar. You will not regret it. It's so beautiful. Then let me talk about the 3 poetry collections that I read. They were all by the same author and kind of the same, not series, but same, I don't know how to call it. The first one was called Pillow Thoughts. The second one was Pillow Thoughts 2, Healing the Heart. And the third one was Pillow Thoughts 3, Mending the Mind. And I enjoyed these a lot, but I have to say the first one was my favorite by far. I think that poetry is one of the most subjective things to read out there. And I think that that does not only apply in the sense of it's different from person to person how much they will like it, but I also think it's different just like depending on where you are in life and what you're craving right now and what you need right now. And I just think that the first one especially just very much spoke to me about just like things that I'm feeling and thinking about. And so I just love that one so much, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The second one definitely still had a lot of things in there that I really connected to and really loved as well, but not quite as much. So I gave that one 4 stars. The third one was definitely like, I feel like I could kind of feel equally depending on the day about the first and the second one. I think the third one is the one that I for sure liked the least. I think it was still good, but I think that the poems in the third one were the ones that I felt the most like just okay about. Like I felt like in the first and second one, a lot of the poems were just like really inspiring, and even the things that like, you know, I didn't like connect to as much, I still really liked them, and I still just really had such a good feeling reading them, or such an intense feeling reading them. Whereas I didn't really have that too much with the third one. The third one felt a little bit generic, I want to say, and like, what does that mean, you know, when it comes to poetry? What does generic mean? Like, I don't know, but like to me personally, I just didn't connect to it, and I also just don't think that the poems were as good. But maybe it was also just because of the topics in it. I feel like it's a mix of all of these things. I definitely think that the poems were just not as good, but I also think that the topics in it weren't quite hitting for me as much as they were in the first and second one. That said, I do still very, very much recommend all 3 of these poetry collections. It was kind of my first proper dive into like an actual poetry collection, and I did not regret it. It was really nice. It was kind of like these different categories. I had this from Script, so I kind of had like, you know, a timer, because I only ever do like 1 month of Script and then pause for a couple of months. So I kind of had like a timer on it. I knew that, you know, I would have to finish it in a certain time. I can't just pick up the physical book and just like read a couple of poems that currently apply to me. But you can definitely do that with these collections. They have like different kind of parts. Like the third one kind of had like, when your mind needs inspiration, when your mind misses someone. I might make that up, but like something like that. So you could also just kind of like, you know, decide for yourself like what you're going to read, what you're in the mood for, or just pick this up. Like if you own it, you can just pick this up whenever. When you feel like you need, you know, a certain kind of poem in your life right now, you can just pick it up and go to the exact section. You know, there was one where it's like, if your heart feels happy and stuff. And like on the day where I started this poetry collection, I did not feel happy at all. So I was like, I don't want to read this. I just want to like read the other stuff and just be a little bit sad. And then the next day I felt better, and then went back to it and ended up reading the section about if your heart feels happy. So I really liked that. I think that the sections that it was put into were just like really well done. And again, especially if you own this, you can just like, you know, you don't have to read this in like one go. You can just like pick it up randomly and read one poem or read a whole section or whatever. So I definitely would recommend these. I, again, don't really know anything about poetry, so I can't really compare them to other works. I can't really say, you know, how great or not great they are just when it comes to like, you know, the writing and stuff. But again, I very much connected to them, and that's what I was looking for. That's the reason why I picked these up, because I kind of had a feeling that I would connect to them, and it's definitely made me want to read more poetry for sure. So I'm very excited to kind of go on that journey. If you have read Pillow Thoughts and you have any poetry that you think is similar, especially when it comes, like, not even so much about the writing, because I think I'm very open to lots of different writing, but more so when it comes to the topics in it. If you have more recommendations, please leave them down in the comments below. I would absolutely love to read more poetry like that, because again, I very, very much connected to it and really loved it. And especially the first one, again, I was just like, this is what I need. This is what I need right now. And I just very much felt like understood in a lot of ways reading that poetry collection. And finally, I want to talk about Empress of All Seasons by Emiko Jean. I read the audiobook for this. This was narrated by Hanako Footman, and I enjoyed this book so much. The audiobook was great too, definitely recommend that as well. But I just think that this was such a fantastic read. I really enjoyed the world building. It's like a Japanese inspired world building, and that kind of was clear all throughout. And I really, really loved that. I think it was really, really interesting world building, really fascinating world building, lots of different kind of mythical creatures and stuff like that. Just really, really enjoyed finding out about this world. I liked so many of the characters so very much. I think that this is a really, really wonderful cast of characters. I really enjoyed a lot of their relationships. They had a lot of very complex relationships. I will say that I think the romantic storyline fell a little bit flat for me, which is annoying because I feel like it had a lot of potential. I think that there was so much potential for this romantic storyline to be like A+, and I high-key think that if it had been an A+ romantic relationship, this totally could have been a 5-star read for me. But it felt a little bit rushed, a little bit insta-lovey. Like, I just think things went a little bit too quickly, just with the stuff that they said to each other. I feel like, you know, just like cross out a couple of sentences of things that they say to each other, and the development of the relationship probably would have been fine, just as it played out. Except for something at the end, maybe. But I don't know, I just think that overall it was just a really, really good book. It's one of those things where it's like I can deal with insta-love, because sometimes it's like, yeah, whatever, let's just get it over with, and like, I'm just happy when they're just like, you know, being in love and shit. But this is just one of those storylines where I'm like, if this romance had been a slow burn, this book just would have been like chef's kiss. So I'm kind of just like, just one of those things where I'm like, the potential. But yeah, again, overall, still really, really enjoyed it. The romantic storyline didn't really do anything to my enjoyment. I just think I could have enjoyed it more if it had been more slow burn. But overall, I just really enjoyed it. Again, world was great. It had really beautiful writing as well. I think sometimes I have a little bit of a hard time really, you know, getting a feel for the writing if I listen to it on audio. But especially listening to it on audiobook, I still had moments where I was like, that was a beautiful quote and I want to write that down, which is unusual. Usually when I listen to audiobooks, I will not really, you know, pay attention to like finding potentially quotable moments or paragraphs or whatever. So the fact that there were moments that stood out to me, even though I was listening to it on audio, that says a lot. So I just think this is a really great book. I think it's really underrated. I think that it had some hype before release, but since then I haven't really heard too many people talk about it, but I would really recommend it. There's some queer side characters in it as well. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I'm so glad that I finally read it. And again, I can highly recommend the audiobook as well. And I gave Empress of All Seasons a 4 out of 5 stars. So yeah, these were the couple of books that I read in the past couple of months. Not too much, but we are here. We have some reading to talk about, and that's great, you know? And I think I am on a good path. Again, I definitely want to read more poetry, and I think reading more poetry is kind of like a really, really good door opener to reading more novels again as well. Maybe I should start reading more graphic novels as well and just like slowly make my way into this, you know, more audiobooks, and then at some point we can get back to like actual reading novels physically. I have some hopes that I will get there, but I just really wanted to talk about these books before even more time passes and I forget about all of them. But yeah, again, if you have any poetry collection recommendations, that was kind of hard for me to say, then please leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, I make the videos kind of once a week at the moment, so let's just put it out there. But still, click subscribe to never miss anything and hit the little bell so you get notified as well. And thank you so much for watching. I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!